Alright, so today what we're actually going to do, we're going to do an introduction to polynomials, okay? So, let's talk a little about what polynomials are and what the different types of polynomials are, whether it's a constant, a linear, a quadratic, a cubic, a quartic, or a quintic, okay? We'll talk about all that stuff today. We'll also talk about what are not polynomials. We'll talk about the standard form of a polynomial. We'll talk about degrees, leading coefficients. And then in our next video, in this video, we'll actually also classify polynomials, but in our next video, we'll actually do adding and subtracting of polynomials and eventually get to seeing how these graphs behave. This video here is an introduction to polynomials, just to get you started, okay? So let's talk about these things here. Let's review. I know I introduced this in one of my other videos, but let's review. Let's say we have a monomial, N-O-M-I-A-L, a monomial. Okay, let's say we have a monomial. Now, a monomial is anything that has one term. Okay, so when I say one term, things like the number 4, that would be a monomial. Okay, then like the number 4x, the expression 4x, that's a monomial. 4x squared is a monomial. 4xy squared is a monomial because it's all multiplication in between here. There's no division, is no addition or subtraction. So it's all therefore it's all going to be one monomial here. Okay. Let's talk about the next one called a binomial. Okay, so a binomial would be what we call a monomial plus a monomial or a monomial minus a monomial. So let's see, this will be a binomial. So 4x minus 3x squared. Okay, this here would be a binomial. A binomial, 2x minus 2, that's a binomial. Okay, let me see here. 4x plus 6y squared is a binomial. Okay, these are all different binomials here. This is a monomial plus a monomial or monomial minus a monomial. Okay, next we'll talk about a trinomial. A trinomial. Now, trinomials, these are your most common ones. We'll run into these a lot in your intermediate algebra classes. And when we get to more advanced algebra classes, we'll deal with more polynomials with 10 terms and 8. We'll run into those. Trinomial has 3 terms. Now, if you remember from our factoring video where we factored quadratic expressions, they were actually trinomials because they were in the form of 4x squared plus 5x plus 6, or things like minus x squared plus 4x plus 7. Okay, this is how they actually look here. These are what we call trinomials. Okay, trinomials. Let's look at one more example of a trinomial. We can say, let's say if we have x minus 2 times x plus 2. If we add this, actually indeed these are 2 binomials, but it's the product of 2 binomials. The product of 2 binomials actually turns into a trinomial, because if we FOIL this out here, first times first, which will give us x squared, then the outer terms, which will give us plus 2x, and then these inner terms, which will give us minus 2x. This is actually not a good example because this is going to give me a binomial because these are the difference of 2 squares, so they're going to cancel out. But if we make that a positive, this will be an x squared, this will be a plus 2x, and this will be a plus 2x here, and then this will be a plus 4. So I'm left with x squared plus 4x plus 4. And this is indeed a trinomial. Okay, so you see that the product of 2 binomials also gives me a trinomial. Okay, all right. Let's go and talk about our last one, which is a polynomial. Okay, which is what this entire lecture series will be about, which is polynomials. All right. Let's see here. Let's get a different color. Okay, so polynomials. Now, polynomials, what we actually say polynomials are, it's in a group of expressions with multiple operations going on. Okay, so if you remember, let's say if we have 4x cubed plus 6x squared plus 4x minus 3. Okay, this is what we call a polynomial here. Okay, now we see it has 4 or more terms, and we also see more than one operation. Well, we see an addition here, we see addition here, and we also see subtraction. Okay, so it's more than one operation going on. It's 2 addition and it's 1 subtraction, and we also see more than 3 terms. We see 4 terms. So it can't be a trinomial. It has to be what we call a polynomial. Now, I don't want this to confuse you guys or anything, but a lot of times in your math classes, what you'll hear is your teachers referring to things like 4x plus 2, or your books referring to things like this as polynomials. They won't really be specific and say this is a binomial. Now, some books will. But if you have, let's say, 4x squared plus 3x plus 6, they'll just, and they say, maybe they'll say factor the polynomial here. You know, they may say that instead of saying factor the trinomial. You'll just hear that come up a little bit. So just to give you a caution sign there, okay? Let's give you one more example of a binomial here. I'm sorry, of a polynomial here. We can say that a polynomial would be, let's just get anything. We'll take 3x to the 6th power plus 4x to the 5th power minus 3x to the, let's do 3x to the 4th minus 2x to the 3rd plus 4. Okay, this would also be an example of a polynomial because it has 3 or more terms. It has more than 3 terms, sorry, 4 or more terms, and we're dealing with multiple operations here. Okay, so this would be an example of a polynomial. All right, now we're going to talk about some things that aren't polynomials in a second here. Let's go ahead and get that started here. Okay. So these things here are not polynomials yet, okay? We need to be able to recognize these things here. So what are not polynomials? What are not polynomials? Well, things like 3 to the x power. This is not a polynomial, okay? Polynomials must be raised to a numerical power, okay? And that brings us to our next one. If we have m to the let's say 3 raised to the 0.75 power. This is not a polynomial. They must be raised to not only numerical powers, but they also must be raised to whole number powers. Okay? So polynomials, so they must be raised, let's put this as a note over here, raised to whole number powers. Okay? They must be raised to whole number powers. All right? So that means that if we take 4 to the 1/2, or if we take, let me see, not instead of 4 to the 1/2, if we take 4 to the 1/3, this would not be a polynomial. Okay. Also, let's look at this here. If we have the absolute value 2b cubed minus 4b. This is not a polynomial. Absolute value does not include to be a polynomial, okay? It's not included to be a polynomial. Okay. One major one that a lot of students mess up on is division. 8 over 5y squared. This is not a polynomial, okay? This is not a polynomial itself because it's division. There should be no division in polynomials. Now, we do have division of polynomials, but in order for me to divide a polynomial, it needs to be a polynomial. But this here is not a polynomial. Now, we'll see, in a later video in this polynomial series, we'll actually see us doing division of polynomials, like let's see x squared plus 4x plus 6 divided into x squared plus minus 4x minus 2. We'll see some division of polynomials here, but both of these, the dividend and the divisor and then the dividend here, they are both polynomials, okay? But yeah, so division of this is not a polynomial here. Square root of variables. 1/2 times the square. Well, let's write that over here. 1/2 times the square root of x. This is not a polynomial. Square root of variables cannot be included as polynomials. These are not polynomials, okay? Let's take a look at, I'm trying to see if I'm missing any more. I think I've covered them all. Yeah, those are all the ones that we've covered that are not polynomials. So if I said this here, if I said is the following x squared plus 4 times square root of m minus m to the 0.5 power. Is this a polynomial here? Well, no. You'd say it's not a polynomial, okay? Because it includes what? It includes the square root of a variable first, and also it includes a power that's not a whole number, okay? Now, so we've went over in this video what are polynomials, which are these here, and what are the different types of polynomials, and we also talked about what weren't polynomials, which are these here. Your exponentials aren't polynomials. Your rational powers, they aren't polynomials. We need all powers to be whole numbers, right? These absolute values aren't polynomials. Square root of variables aren't polynomials, okay? And division, most importantly, is not a polynomial, okay? Now, this is the last thing we're going to do in this video. We're actually going to classify polynomials by their degrees, okay? Well, we'll do that in the next video so I can introduce you to degrees.